Ever wondered what happens when a small town dude dives headfirst into the chaotic abyss of Seoul? Meet Yoon Jung-woo, the main bro from the 2019 K-drama Strangers from Hell. This guy's journey is like watching a frat bro swap his keg for a ticking time bomb. Jung-woo's just your average 20-something, ditching the boonies for the big city vibes of Seoul. He lands a gig at a tiny office thinking he's about to live the dream. But, plot twist, dude ends up in Eden's studio, this sketchy shared living spot that's more American Horror Story than Friends. The neighbors? Let's just say they're the kind you'd swipe left on, hard. As days turn into nights, and probably some all-nighters, our boy Jung-woo starts spiraling. The combo of psycho neighbors and a job that's about as fun as a group project with slackers pushes him to the edge. It's like watching your buddy lose it during finals week, but with way more murdery vibes. So grab your bag of shrimp chips and buckle up, because diving into Jung-woo's psyche is wilder than any bachelor party we've ever crashed. And hey, if this analysis gets too real, just remember, at least your roommates aren't literal psychopaths. Or are they? Nah, just messing. Probably. Our boy starts having these messed up dreams, flashing back to his military days. Turns out, he once beat the snot out of a superior who was being a total jerk. In his dreams though, the faces keep changing. Sometimes it's his sketchy neighbors, other times it's his annoying co-workers. It's like his brain's playing a twisted game of Guess Who. Speaking of work, Jung-woo's job is a dumpster fire. His boss, a grade A jerk. His co-worker, dude's got a superiority complex the size of Seoul. They're constantly riding him, making him question his life choices. Ever had a boss who makes you want to scream into a pillow? Yeah, multiply that by 10. Back at the studio, things are getting freakier. The residents are like a horror movie lineup. These folks aren't just weird, they're dangerous. And Jung-woo's stuck in the middle, like the last piece of candy at a 3rd grade Halloween party. Everyone's eyeing him, and not in a good way. As days drag on, Jung-woo's grip on reality starts slipping. The line between his nightmares and waking life blurs. He starts seeing things, hearing whispers, feeling like he's always being watched. It's like that time you pulled 3 all-nighters in a row and started hallucinating, except there's no exam, just existential dread. Eventually, our dude snaps. The constant paranoia, the creepy neighbors, the job from hell, it all piles up. Jung-woo goes from a mild-mannered writer to someone you wouldn't want to mess with. He confronts his tormentors and, let's just say, things get bloody. By the end, Jung-woo's a changed man. The sweet guy who moved to Seoul, gone. In his place is someone hardened by trauma, paranoia, and a descent into madness. Our best bro has turned into a stranger and became someone we barely recognize. Let's talk about what started it all, his move to Seoul. Bro, anyone who's tried to start fresh in a big city knows it's not for the faint of heart. Jung-woo shows up, bright-eyed and full of small-town optimism, but reality slaps him in the face. His job is garbage, his coworkers are insufferable, and he ends up renting a room in what is basically a haunted shoebox with plumbing. Now, here's where things get real. Jung-woo's already got some baggage. He's carrying the weight of expectations, both his own and everyone else's, and that pressure to make it makes him put up with way more than he should. When you're so focused on proving yourself, it's easy to ignore all the red flags. Like, bro, literal murdery vibes in every corner. But he's thinking, I've got to stick it out. We've all been there, right? Stuck in a crappy situation, telling ourselves it'll get better even when every instinct is screaming, run dude, run. Let's talk about his neighbors. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill weirdos who leave their laundry in the washer too long. These are the kind of people who'd make you invest in multiple deadbolts. At first, they're just creepy, watching him, making weird comments, testing his boundaries, but then they start to mess with his mind. Take Moon-jo, the smiley dentist with a knack for manipulation. This dude zeroes in on Jung-woo like a predator sensing vulnerability. He's not just a psychopath, he's a charismatic psychopath. The kind that makes you question if you're the crazy one. Moon-jo feeds Jung-woo's growing paranoia, whispering just the right things to push him further into isolation. He's like the devil on Jung-woo's shoulder, and honestly, he's too good at it. Bro, if I had someone like Moon-jo in my life, I'd probably be questioning my sanity too. And that's the thing, once Jung-woo starts doubting himself, he's toast. Let's not forget the cherry on top of Jung-woo's misery sundae, his job. His boss is the textbook definition of a gaslighting jerk, and his coworker is basically the embodiment of every toxic coworker you've ever wanted to slap. Instead of finding a safe space at work, Jung-woo's stuck in another version of hell. What's wild though is how much these two worlds, Eden's studio and his job, start to blur. His resentment towards his coworker spills over into his fantasies, where he imagines taking out all that pent-up anger. And yeah, maybe you've had a bad day at work and thought, I could strangle this guy. But for Jung-woo, those thoughts start to feel dangerously real. It's not just stress, it's like he's being molded into something darker. Jung-woo's breaking point isn't just about his neighbors or his job, it's about him. The real horror of this show isn't the murderers or the creepy vibes, it's watching Jung-woo lose the fight against his own mind. Throughout the series, he tries so hard to hold on to his morals. He wants to be a good person, but the world keeps throwing him into situations where that's almost impossible. The neighbors pushing his buttons. His boss dehumanizing him. And let's not forget those haunting flashbacks to his military days where he sees glimpses of the violence he's already capable of. The moment he snaps, bro, it's almost cathartic. You're like, yeah, these people totally deserve what's coming to them. But at the same time, you're like, oh no, Jung-woo, you've crossed the line, dude. He goes from being the guy you root for to being someone you're kinda scared of. And that's the genius of his character arc. It's not a transformation, it's a revelation. All that darkness was already inside him, just waiting for the right conditions to come out. Let's take a second to talk about the people in Jung-woo's life who aren't trying to kill him. His girlfriend Ji-eun is one of the few bright spots in his life. She's supportive, kind, and genuinely cares about him. But here's the thing, Jung-woo doesn't open up to her. He keeps all his fears and frustrations bottled up, trying to be the strong guy. And bro, we all know where that leads, straight to a mental breakdown. Ji-eun represents the life Jung-woo could have had if he just let her in. But instead, he isolates himself, pushing her away as he spirals further into paranoia. It's heartbreaking, but it's also frustrating. Like, dude, you've got someone who loves you, talk to her. But nah, Jung-woo's too far gone by the time he realizes she can't save him. What makes Jung-woo such a fascinating character is how the show flips the script. At the start, he's the victim, the guy everyone sympathizes with. But by the end, he's the one we're scared of. His transformation feels inevitable, like watching a car crash in slow motion. The way the show builds his transformation is genius. Every choice Jung-woo makes, every relationship he destroys, every boundary he crosses, it all adds up. And by the time he takes out Moon-jo, you're left wondering, is this justice? Or has he just become another monster? Dude, let's start with the basics. Jung-woo's entire move to Seoul was driven by ambition. Like, he's not in this city because he wanted to chill or find himself. He's there to grind. The pressure he's under to make something of himself is practically its own character in the show. And bro, let's be honest, this hustle culture we live in is pretty trash. You watch Jung-woo trying to survive in a toxic workplace while living in a literal dump, and you can't help but feel for the guy. The dude's not lazy. He's out there doing his best, but the world keeps slapping him down and it starts to break him. It's a reminder that no matter how tough you think you are, constant stress will wear you down, especially when you don't have a solid support system. Home is supposed to be where you recharge, right? Like, you get home after a long day, throw on some sweatpants and just exist. But for Jung-woo, Eden's studio is more like a psychological torture chamber. Every time he tries to relax, there's something or someone there to crank up the tension. Whether it's Moon-jo's creepy smiles, Nam-bok's unsettling behavior, or the twins' bizarre antics, it's like the guy can't catch a break. The show did a killer job of capturing how an oppressive environment can mess with your head. Jung-woo doesn't just deal with the obvious stuff, like the noise and the lack of privacy. It's the subtle things that get to him. Whispers in the hallway, the feeling of being watched, the sense that no matter what he does, he's never really alone. That kind of constant low-grade stress is exhausting. It's like walking around with a weighted blanket on your brain, and over time, it just grinds you down. Here's the thing about paranoia. It doesn't just show up out of nowhere. It's your brain trying to protect you, even if it gets a little overzealous about it. Jung-woo starts off just being wary of his neighbors, which, let's be real, is totally valid. But as the show goes on, his suspicion ramps up to the point where he's questioning everything and everyone. And honestly, I get it. When you're in a situation where you feel constantly threatened, your brain goes into overdrive. You start looking for danger everywhere because you don't want to get blindsided. But the flip side of that is you end up seeing danger where there isn't any. Jung-woo's paranoia isn't just a symptom of his environment, it's a survival tactic. It's his mind trying to keep him safe in a place where he knows deep down that he's not. If there's one thing Jung-woo's really bad at, it's talking about his feelings. And look bro, I'm not here to judge. I get it. Opening up is hard, especially when you're dealing with stuff you can barely process yourself. But the longer he bottles everything up, the worse it gets. His girlfriend Ji-eun tries to be there for him, but he keeps her at arm's length. Instead of telling her how much the job and the studio are getting to him, he puts on a brave face and pretends everything's fine. Spoiler, it's not. By the time he does start to crack, it's too late. Ji-eun doesn't even recognize the guy he's become, and honestly, neither does he. Watching Jung-woo's emotional suppression play out is frustrating. You want to yell at him to just say something, but you also know that when you're in that headspace, it's not that simple. It's a vicious cycle. You feel like you can't talk to anyone, so you keep everything inside, which makes you feel even more isolated, which makes it even harder to talk. Rinse and repeat until your brain feels like it's eating itself. Here's the thing about Jung-woo's ultimate mental breakdown. It's not just because of the creepy neighbors or the toxic work environment. It's the combination of everything. The stress, the isolation, the constant feeling of being on edge. At a certain point, it stops being about what's real and what's not and becomes about how much you can handle before you snap. The show does a great job of blurring the line between reality and perception. When Jung-woo starts seeing things, you're not sure if it's just his paranoia wrapping up or if the neighbors really are messing with him. And honestly, he doesn't know either. That's the scariest part. When you can't trust your own mind, what do you have left? By the time Jung-woo starts fantasizing about hurting people, it's not even shocking. It's almost inevitable. Dude's been pushed so far past his limits that violence starts to feel like the only way out. And that's what's so disturbing about his arc. You get it. You're not sitting there going, why is he doing this? You're sitting there going, yeah, I probably would have snapped way sooner. Violence becomes Jung-woo's way of taking back control. In a world where he feels powerless, at work, at home, in his own head, lashing out gives him a sense of agency. It's not healthy, obviously, but it makes sense. And that's what makes it so unsettling. You're not just watching a guy lose his mind. You're watching a guy find a twisted sense of peace in his own destruction. Even after the final bloodbath, you're left wondering what happens next for Jung-woo. The dude's not coming back from this, bro. He's not just physically scarred, he's mentally wrecked. And while the show ends with him walking away, you can't help but think about what's waiting for him down the road. The psychological toll of what he's been through, what he's done, isn't going away. The guy's got PTSD, trust issues, and a whole lot of unresolved trauma. And the worst part, he doesn't have anyone left to help him deal with it. Ji-eun's gone, his family's far away, and he's probably not going to be making any new friends anytime soon. It's a lonely, brutal existence, and it's hard not to feel for him, even after everything. Alright bro, let's hit the brakes and reflect on this wild ride. So here's the $1 million question. If you found yourself in a situation like Jung-woo, trapped in a toxic environment with no easy way out, would you survive with your sanity intact? Or would you, like him, spiral into a darkness that you didn't even know you had? Tough one, right? Let's unpack this. Here's the thing about Jung-woo. He doesn't walk into Eden's studio thinking, this is where my sanity goes to die. He's hopeful, maybe a little naive, and totally focused on grinding his way through life. Sound familiar? It's the classic push through the pain mindset we've all been fed. But as the weirdness starts stacking up like Moonjo's too friendly vibes and Nanbok's unsettling behavior, it's clear things are off. And yet, he stays. Would you have stayed? Be real. It's easy to say hell no when you're chilling on your couch with snacks watching the drama unfold. But in the moment when you've got no cash and no backup plan, yeah, maybe you'd convince yourself to stay too. That's the thing. Red flags don't look like red flags when you're desperate. They look like challenges to overcome. And that, bro, is where the trouble begins. If the show taught me anything, it's that your environment matters, like a lot. Eden's studio is practically a character in the show, with its dingy hallways, claustrophobic rooms, and paper-thin walls. It's a pressure cooker, bro, and Jungwoo's psyche is the egg that's getting scrambled. Think about it. How many of us have been in places that just felt off? A toxic workplace, a bad relationship, or even just a sketchy apartment. These places don't just sit there passively. They seep into you, mess with your energy, and start chipping away at who you are. By the time Jungwoo starts losing it, you're not even surprised. Eden's studio wasn't just where he lived. It was a crucible that reshaped him. And honestly, that's terrifying. Let's talk about Jungwoo's biggest downfall, his refusal to acknowledge he needed help. Like, dude was clearly unraveling, but instead of reaching out, he just kept bottling everything up. Classic move, right? We've all been there, thinking we can handle everything on our own, only to realize too late that we're drowning. Why do we do this to ourselves? Is it pride? Fear? Maybe it's the idea that admitting we're struggling makes us weak. But let me tell you, bro, there's nothing weak about saying, I'm not okay. If Jungwoo had opened up to someone, anyone, maybe things wouldn't have gone off the rails. On the flip side, if anyone had bothered to even listen, maybe the show would have ended only after a few episodes. Then again, this is a horror drama, so I guess peace of mind wasn't exactly on the menu. Here's a question for you. If you were in Jungwoo's position, would you have fought back or just bailed? Let's be real, there's no shame in running away from a bad situation. Sometimes the best thing you can do is cut your losses in GTFO. But for Jungwoo, leaving wasn't just a logistical problem, it was an emotional one. He felt like staying and toughing it out was the only way to prove himself. But at what cost? By the time he realizes he's in too deep, it's already too late. And that's what makes his story so tragic. He's not just fighting against his neighbors, he's fighting against himself, against his own need to stick it out no matter how much it's killing him. So what about you? Would you stay and fight, or would you peace out the moment things started getting sketchy? Alright, here's the part that really messes with your head. The idea that we all have a little bit of Jungwoo inside us. Like, sure, you might think you'd never snap the way he did, but can you really be so sure? Stress, isolation, and constant fear can push anyone to their breaking point. And the scariest part? You might not even see it coming. Jungwoo didn't wake up one day and decide to go full-on psycho. It was a slow, creeping descent fueled by the environment around him and the battles in his own head. Watching it play out makes you wonder, what's your breaking point? How much could you handle before you started losing yourself? Look, I'm not gonna pretend I've lived through anything like Eden's studio, thankfully, but I've had my fair share of I might lose it moments. Let's just say I was one bad day away from turning into a ranting maniac. The thing is, I didn't do what Jungwoo did. I didn't tough it out. I bailed. And yeah, it felt like a failure at the time, but looking back, it was the best decision I've ever made. Sometimes the only way to win is to walk away. That's what makes Jungwoo's story hit so hard. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when you don't. If you take one thing away from the drama, let it be this. You're not invincible, bro. Nobody is. Life can throw you into some seriously messed up situations, and if you don't take care of your mental health, it can chew you up and spit you out. But here's the good news. You're not alone. No matter how bad things get, there's always someone out there who's willing to listen. Whether it's a friend, a therapist, or even some random dude on the internet. The point is, you don't have to go through it alone. Jungwoo thought he did, and look where that got him. Strangers from Hell isn't just a show about a guy losing his mind. It's a mirror. It forces you to confront your own fears, your own limits, and your own capacity for darkness. It's unsettling, sure, but it's also kind of redemptive. Because if you can face that darkness head on, if you can acknowledge it and deal with it, you're already ahead of the game. The next time you're feeling overwhelmed, don't ignore it. Don't bottle it up. Talk to someone. Take a break. Do whatever you need to do to get your head straight. Because trust me, bro, the only thing scarier than the monsters and strangers from hell is the one you create inside your own mind. And with that, I'm out. Stay sane, bros. You never know who's watching. Thanks everyone for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Also be sure to check out my other videos for more insight on other dramas and shows. Your support means a lot to me and it helps me grow this channel. If you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future videos, please drop them in the comments down below. Again, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.